Hello and welcome. You're still watching This Day Live Arise talk show. The Supreme Court last Friday delivered 8 landmark judgments on appeals arising from the March 18, 2023 governorship elections, with the decision on Kano and Plateau states being the standout cases. Governor Abba Yusuf of Kano and Caleb Mutfwang got redemption when it seemed like they had lost their governorship seats following decisions at the lower courts. While schools have resumed nationwide after the holidays, reports said the resumption has brought to the fore the current economic realities in Nigeria. Correspondent Makole Boko filed this report on the situation in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory.
According to figures made available to Arise News, there has been a 60% reduction in the number of students that resumed in a number of schools. The twin reasons are increased school fees and cost of transportation.
People are not finding it very easy. Like issue of transport now, most of the students were not in school today. They stayed away. And the percentage of students I have in my school today, compared to our population of students, is more or less about 40%. They should help the parents by, subsidizing. If anyone can subsidize transport for people to travel to the village for the festival, I think there is a need for government to also subsidize school materials for the students.
They should give employment to parents so that parents can be able to sponsor their children to school. Because children not going to school is going to cause many bad things in our community. You see small child hawking, small child stealing. It's not good like that. Government should do something to the school. If possible, let there be free education.
While some private schools have hiked fees to meet current realities, some others, which have not, want government to create a better economic space for schools to thrive.
Luckily, here at the Arietian, we actually did not increase our fees because we understand the economic situation in the society. One of the major problems we are having is the fuel hike and the dollar increase. I think if it can be stabilized, it will help every other aspect of the school community. And because as a private school, I don't think the government can really do much because we are private schools.
This school fees issue is really stressing out my parents, yeah. And to cope with school fees, because we are 5 in our family, well, it's only me that is going to government school, and the rest are going to private school. I was even planning on staying back this day because of the school fees issue.
After school, I used to come out and sell zobo outside, so I can able to pay, my mom can able to pay my school fees, and me too, I'm helping myself.
Some students say the high cost of living continues to affect both them and their families negatively.
A very dire situation, the picture painted there by that reporter. To discuss this topic, I am now being joined by Dr. Mandi Obani. He's a lawyer and former First National Vice President of Nigeria Bar Association. Ubani, you are welcome. He's also a one-time chairman of the Nigeria Bar Association Ikeja branch in Lagos. Good evening. Welcome to This Day Live. 60% reduction in school attendance. How dangerous is that to our society? And does the government really understand and appreciate the enormity of what the parents are facing and the backlash to the country in the future? Monday.
Yeah, thank you, Andy, for having me. I think there is a mix-up. Andy, I'm being brought to discuss the Supreme Court cases that were decided last Friday, but not about the school issue. Maybe there is a mix-up, and that needs to be corrected. I'm very sorry about this.
The Supreme Court issue, which is, of course, I find it rather I don't know, I don't want to use the word interesting. When governors across the board, I have had them say things like this: we thank Mr. President, you know, and then they thank their supporters. Isn't that connotative? When you start thanking the president, is not a lawyer, he's not on the Supreme Court. Why are they thanking the president? Let's start there and then we'll break it down. And what do you make of that talk, thanking the president?
Yes, thank you for having me. Well, and the president today is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He is the chief executive of the country. And so I don't see anything wrong in appreciating when you are very happy, the president of the country. You can also appreciate your mother, your father, and your uncles. Maybe you can also appreciate the Senate president and the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And then appreciate the voters who have actually elected you as the governor. So I may not be in a position to read any meaning to the fact that those who were declared winners or whose victory was affirmed or were affirmed by the Supreme Court, chose to thank the president of the country first before thanking others. I may not want to read any meanings into it. I just want to appreciate the president for allowing the rule of law to prevail, because we are in a funny continent where anything can happen. A president may wake up and say, look, I may not want to obey the order of the court. I think there's a particular place now in Africa where people are protesting because the president said expressly that he will defy any court order that is made in the country. And because he's an executive president, it can happen, and he may get away with it. And so if a president of Nigeria allow the court to operate without any interference, and they made a pronouncement that affects the victory of a particular candidate, and that candidate chooses to say, thank you, Mr. President, I won't want to read any meaning to it, my brother.
Fine, but you really touched on why I am saying or thinking is connotative. You said allow.
Yes.
How does the president allow? That's what I'm trying to bring up, because you use the word allow. Yeah. Allow the courts. Does the president allow the courts to do their duty, do their job? Judiciary? If that happens, is it not a taint on the judiciary?
No, the position of thing is that in democracy, every arm of government ought to be independent and operate independent of each other and allowed to do their duty. But we have seen in an African continent where some of these bizarre things do happen, where presidents interfere even with the judicial process, interfere with other arms of government. But we're very fortunate here in Nigeria where over time, since 1999 to date, we have never had any clear situation where the president or the governors have directly interfered with the judiciary. I mean, not something that is clearly direct. There may be some other probably indirect interference, but not direct. And so where we have such a situation where the president himself has made the rule of law as a mantra and say it's one of my agendas, and I will ensure that the rule of law prevail in the country, and then to really back it up, court pronouncement is being made that actually reflect the wishes of the people. As I said earlier, and the people now chose, let's appreciate the president. At least for us in Nigeria, we're very fortunate to have presidents who do not interfere with other arms of government and say, look, Mr. President, thank you for not interfering with this thing, because we have other countries where such do occur in African continent. So what I'm trying to say is that for saying that, I'm not in any way alluding that there has been previous interference by president, but we know what happened in African continent. Bizarre things do happen. Undemocratic practices by those who were elected, even by the people, do occur. But in our own case, since 1999 to date, there has not been this direct interference. And so if they choose to tag the president, ND, as I said earlier, I will not want to read any meaning to it, and I would not like you to read any meaning for those who chose to thank the president. And I don't think that the issue of allowing it is even the issue. The judiciary has been bold enough, and they have demonstrated capacity in this particular decision that they reached on Friday, and everyone is happy. You can see that everywhere in the country there is absolute calm, there is calmness in the land, there is absolute peace, there is rejoicing in the land, especially those states you mentioned Kano and of course Plateau State, where those decisions that was reached by the Supreme Court actually reflected the will and wishes of the people.
All right, fantastic. You've touched on my next point, which is, do you think that the apex court was just being conservative and mindful of security implications, if there were any, particularly in these states, what you mentioned, and that from what we see, it does mean that the courts did not decide the elections, rather the people decided who governs them?
That's a very brilliant question. That's where it's supposed to be. We have always said it that, of course, the judicial intervention in our electoral process is allowed by our jurisprudence. When anyone feels that he's aggrieved in any electoral victory or announcement, he has a right to go through the court. In our judicial system, in Nigeria, as outlined for electoral matters, we have the tribunal, we have matters that end at the Court of Appeal. In some other cases, like the governorship and that of the presidential, it ends at the Supreme Court. And so we have known that that is our position today in our jurisprudence, that judiciary must necessarily intervene in our electoral process. It happens all over the world. But what we're trying to say is that in that intervention by the judiciary should not substitute the majority mandate with that of the minority. That they should not use technicality in order to defeat where the masses, where the majority have said, oh, this is the person we have elected to govern us. Because we have had instances where that had occurred. And over time, people have been writing, people have been criticizing, people have been saying it loud and clear, that judiciary in intervention must be very careful not to intervene in such a manner that the will of the people will be made invalid. And the Supreme Court has been very careful in the decision it has reached recently. I mean, the 8 cases you mentioned, and they all reflected the fact that where the majority have said this is the person we want, they have also now affirmed it by the Supreme Court, not allowing any form of technicality, especially with this issue of nomination or who is a member of a political party. Is something we need to go deeper with professors of law, looking into what this court is now saying, that the manner of nomination or the manner of membership of a member of a political party does not concern any other person who is not a member of that political party. If you do that, then you become an interloper, you're a busybody. It's only those who are members of the political party, who are also contestants, that can now query the manner of nomination, or when somebody's membership of a political party is an issue. If they say it's an internal matter of the political party, that is what the decision of the Supreme Court has actually established as a precedent. That when it concerns the issue of membership of a political party or the issue of nomination, you who is not a member of that political party should not in any way be interfering by arguing that the person is not properly nominated or is not a member. And so that again has been settled by the Supreme Court in this decision. And most importantly is where those people were elected by the people, and INEC has declared by majority vote, and there is what we call substantial compliance, and the irregularities that is alleged to have occurred is very minimal. The Supreme Court has said that we cannot interfere, especially where there is a concurrent decision of the 2 courts, below. But where the Court of Appeal has not done it well, you can see that the Supreme Court has also strengthened their voice and strengthened their manner of doing things. In Plateau, you see what the Supreme Court did. In Kano, you saw what the Supreme Court did, and said, no, you cannot use this issue that, oh, you didn't sign the voters' ballot paper. You did not in any way put a signature and date it. That is a reason for you now to invalidate all the votes of the people that have elected their governor. You can't do that. And then when it concerns issue of membership of a political party who have decided to choose who will be their candidate on the ballot box, you have no right to come in from another political party to interfere in that process. This is what the Supreme Court has established in these cases. And I think the people are very happy with those decisions of the Supreme Court.
All right. Do you see a maturing process in our political system and in the judiciary with what has transpired from the apex court? And what seems to be the problem, if you like, at the tribunal, appeal courts level, and the apex court? Is it that the bodies responsible for churning out judges to give correct judgments are not overseeing, or that the appointments to this at these levels are done wrongly, or is it a case of the law being an ass? Which one is it?
Yeah, the position of things is that the people that sit on the bench in order to give decisions are human beings. And so they may commit some errors. They are not gods. They are people that water and blood flows in their system. And so they are subject to errors. Now, but the system itself has built a mechanism in order to ensure that there is correction at every stage. And that's why, as I said earlier, in some of the stages, we have 2 stages. Even though I will talk about it later with regards to some of the legislators that lost their election at the Court of Appeal, and there is no further appeal to Supreme Court. But the system has built a mechanism in order to make sure that if the lower court is wrong, then the upper court should be able to look at it with clearer view and picture and correct them. Now, if the Court of Appeal is also wrong, the Supreme Court now finally take a very holistic look and correct any error that may have been committed by either the lowest court or the other court, and before it gets to the Supreme Court. So that mechanism that is put in place is for correction basis, meaning that these people are not perfect. They are still human beings. We're not even saying that the Supreme Court itself, they are imperfect. I mean, they are perfect and they can't make any error. They are not perfect, because of the fact that they are the Supreme, but because of the fact that they now have to look at the lowest court decision, look at the lower court, that is Court of Appeal, and have the advantage of now looking at it holistically and now take a decision that may reflect the true position of the law. And that's why I keep on telling people who were complaining here before now that the Supreme Court will strengthen the law, that the Supreme Court will take a correct position that will establish a precedent that many persons will be very happy. And I'm very happy that the Supreme Court has finally, in all these cases, established the fact that, look, even if there are errors at the lowest court, we should not get bothered that at the end of the day, the Supreme Court will always be there to clear the mess, if any. And that is actually what has happened. So most times, I don't want to delve into the fact maybe those who were appointed were in error. Sometimes conflicting decisions of the Court of Appeal can give a wrong signal to the court below. And sometimes they don't know which one to follow. But the Supreme Court will always strengthen the law and say, this is now the precedent. From the next election, from what has happened so far, I don't think we are going to have a lot of wrong decisions as we had in these cases that happened recently under 2023. We will now have Supreme Court establishing most of those areas where there has been some level of conflict or misunderstanding of the law. The Supreme Court has now set a very clear precedent on some of those issues so that nobody should any time, at any point in time in 2027, begin to make those errors we committed in 2023 general election in our decisions of the court.
What has this judgment done for the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in terms of traducers and their abuse? I mean, there's been quite a lot of abuse and bad talk of the judiciary. Add that to the fact that all the people that won elections are speaking volumes about the judiciary. Some of these same people trust the judiciary when it didn't go their way. Monday.
Yes, the point is this. It's normal at times to feel aggrieved if decisions don't go your way. And then when it goes your way, you now praise the judiciary. I've seen it happen over time. Even those that call judiciary all manner of names, when any decision goes in their favor, you also see them the way they will exalt, the name of those justices, at the various courts, So sometimes I may look at it that it's maybe human. Everyone wants success. Everyone do not in any way entertain failure. In fact, failure is an orphan. And so what has happened now with people now praising the president and even thanking him is the fact that they were afraid that there may be an undue interference by the executive over judicial decisions, and they were really very scared. And when it became apparent that the president himself was not interested but wanted the rule of law to prevail and allow and do not in any way come nearer in changing whatever has been done, through the position of the law, it doesn't mean that everyone now begin to thank the president for not, as I said earlier, it does happen in some places in Africa where some presidents do interfere. But in our own case, since 1999, we have never had any direct interference. And we have had a situation where the president in this particular instance was not seen to have done anything that seems that's an interference. So that's why you see all the praises and all that. So those who are really praising him now have a really good cause to praise him. But those who were aggrieved over the other lost cases and all that, I don't see it as anything we should worry ourselves about. You know, it's normal for people to feel bad when they lose a case and begin to say all manner of things and all that. But the most important thing is that the judiciary must always remain focused, and that is what they have done in this case. They remain focused, they remain undeterred, and nobody can in any way, through criticism, make them now to do the wrong thing. And what they have done, even with the 8 decisions, that they have done the right thing by being bold enough, by saying we are not going to be cajoled, we are not going to be in any way interfered with by any person. What is law, and we are ready to uphold the mandate of Nigerians who have voted their governors in all the various states. And that is what actually happened in these particular 8 cases. And I think people are saying kudos to the judiciary, and also kudos to the government that is clearly in power. I don't see anything wrong in praising the government that is in power for not doing anything that is wrong.
All right, Monday, in less than 45 seconds, if you can. You said you would talk about it. I'm bringing it up. The case of the lawmakers who lost out because, of course, they couldn't go up to the higher level of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
How do we remedy that?
Now, I think it is very unfortunate, because if you look at the decisions of the court, you know, of the Supreme Court, you know, with regards to issue of nomination and issue of membership of political party, the court has established the fact that it is not the business of another member of a political party who is not even a contestant to begin to raise that issue. Some of the legislators lost at the Court of Appeal, and they don't have any remedy, because the Supreme Court is clearly, they are ousted from deciding their case. And I don't know what remedy now. But the point is that others are now saying, do we now allow the legislators' matter to now go to Supreme Court? When we are saying that we've overburdened the Supreme Court, we think that the Court of Appeal must put their house in order. The Court of Appeal must put their house in order. And I'm speaking to them directly. What they did this year or last year, in some of their decisions were absolutely wrong and do not sit well with a lot of people who are legal pundits. I think they have to really rectify themselves and really know that the Supreme Court's decision must not in any way be interfered with and must follow precedent, and be bold enough to establish law and not sentiment, and avoid technicality, especially where the mandate of the people is very express and clear. They should not in any way substitute it with any minority vote. It is very important. So the Court of Appeal must be very, very careful in doing the right thing, so that we don't begin now to advocate that every matter must go to Supreme Court. We're overburdening the Supreme Court. The Court of Appeal must put its house in order. But if they fail to, then I will be one of those now aligning myself that every matter must end at the Supreme Court. But if they put their house in order, I'm saying that we must try as much as possible to end some of the matters at the Court of Appeal. But if they fail to and remain recalcitrant and don't want to change, then we might as well be suggesting that every matter must end at the Supreme Court. That is what I want to say concerning that.
Unwieldy, like you just said, for the Supreme Court. Thank you so much. That is Dr. Mandi Obani, a lawyer, a former first national president of the Nigeria Bar Association. He's also a one-time chairman of the Nigeria Bar Association Ikeja branch in Lagos. Thank you once again.